Oh, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Brooke, for that kind introduction and warm welcome. I was reading a quote that begins, "It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men and women." And that was Sam Adams, one of the United States founding fathers. So many people here today, and some who sadly couldn't be, fit Sam Adams' description. I know that there's one or two people here who are occasionally irate, and to get this far, we've had to be tireless. And I suspect we'll always be a minority, but we'll succeed by setting those brush fires in people's minds. Human freedom, to do what you like if you don't harm others, is the only thing that's truly worth fighting for, because only when that principle prevails can we turn our efforts to fighting problems in the natural world instead of each other. Now, this is no swan song, it's just a little rest before the next climb, perhaps the next setback. We've had lots of both, and we'll have lots more. But today's an opportunity to thank each person here for their efforts setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of New Zealanders, and to recommit ourselves to our mission of promoting a free society. Now, it hasn't always been easy. If I had to pick a theme song for the last 10 years, it could be Mark Knopfler, The Scaffolder's Wife. Mark always writes with great empathy for the struggling. And he says, "In the wicked old days when we went it alone, kept the company going on a wing and a prayer." Those words really stick with me because they sum up the first 6 years of leading ACT. In fact, it hasn't just been a bit difficult. Most of the time, it seemed bloody impossible. In fact, it's a happy miracle that our party even exists. There's no party committed to human freedom anywhere in the world as successful as ACT. And the reason why is most politicians find it too easy to get votes by promising other people's money or promising to regulate other people's freedom. We, for better or worse, take the hard road. We seek to win political power by promising voters only the freedom to make the most of their time on earth. And we do so because it's only the creative powers of a free society that can generate the wealth to overcome our many challenges and sorrows. And not only is the mission of ACT fundamentally hard, sometimes one or two of us have made it harder than may have been necessary. I hesitate to bring it up, but once or twice we've burned ourselves on our own brush fires along the way. Our perk buster took a perk, our tough-on-crime guy got convicted, our leadership had a civil war. We were subject to a very unconventional coup. In 2011, we ran the most courageous three-pronged election campaign in modern history. Supply-side economics, one law for all, and freeing the weed. Sadly, while there were constituencies for all three causes, none of them could get along. Then John Banks came along and steadied the ship. And I want to thank John for his unconditional support of this party. Thank you, John. You see, John didn't just allow the party to survive, he allowed it to survive as a Liberal party. And I can only imagine being turned around to vote for gay marriage wasn't easy for John. On the other hand, saying no to Jenny Gibbs isn't easy either. What a conundrum. But John's sacrifices allowed Jamie White and I to run a ticket in 2014. Little did we realise things could still get much, much worse. It turned out that my dear friend with a CV from Cambridge and from heaven was brilliant at everything except for one thing, and sadly that was politics. I say all of this, partly because you've got to have some gallows humour in this business, but also because it forms the backdrop to one hell of a climb. And you have to see where we started to see how far we've come. And that is, in order to see the full achievement of the people in this room, and some who can't be here today, is that we've made ACT the world's most successful classical Liberal party. For 5 years, Nothing we did made a jot of difference. Beth Holbrook, who's here today, my previous deputy leader, organised every conference, slogged it out, and really showed people that politics is hard work. Nonetheless, there was a Facebook group called Is ACT Polling 1% Yet? For about 5 years. It seemed like it would be forever. People said our party was not legitimate. They said we shouldn't even be in Parliament. They said we had no real agency, being an offshoot of another party. And when they talked about us, they didn't talk about what I was saying in the present. Instead, they judged us by things others had done when I was living in another country. And after the election disaster of 2017, I said it didn't matter what our shop was selling. We just couldn't get anyone in the door, let alone getting their wallet out. Now that kind of relentless doomism we were subjected to was actually the opposite of everything that ACT stands for. Because we believe, as Richard Prebble says, and I've been thinking, great read by the way, that life isn't like bad weather. You can make a difference in your time on earth. And unfortunately, at that time though, some things were like bad weather. We couldn't make it rain financially. Eric Clapton once said that nobody knows you when you're down and out. And I can tell you from experience, no one donates to your political party either. Lindsay Ferguson is one of those people who can't be here today. May he rest in peace. And I remember we got down to $7,000 left and we were going to be evicted from our offices in a few weeks if things didn't change. Lindsay put $5,000 in ACT's account and said, "Don't tell Lynn." I'm not sure if Lynn's here today, but Lynn, it's probably time you can finally know the secret. I used to try and call 2 ACT members every week. And one day I called this guy called Chris Reeve. And I noticed on the party database that his email address was Superman. And then he said, that was 2 unlikely things. He said, "I then want to donate to the ACT party." I thought, this guy can't be for real. So I earnestly explained where the party was up to and what I needed to raise to keep it going for another year. And Chris looked at me and said, "Mate, I'll do half of that if that Jenny Gibbs will do the other half." I still remember clearly the first time I met her in 2005. She bounded up to me and said, "I'm a social liberal too." Her generous support of ACT is published by the Electoral Commission, but her personal support of successive ACT leaders is not. She's one of the warmest and wisest women in New Zealand, and we're lucky to have her. Sadly, she couldn't be here this morning because she's battling one of these microbes that seem to be going around, but we're very grateful to have her. Now, it's true that not every donor gives in the thousands, but thousands have given donations to keep our party alive, even when it may have seemed like palliative care. And I want to thank everyone who's given to ACT, whether it was $5 or $5,000. Other people give their time. You know, in those wicked old days when we went it alone, I was never really alone because so many people helped delivering mail, erecting signs, filling out the party accounts, opening up their homes for house meetings. Alison and Stu McFarlane rapidly edited my second book, Own Your Future. They said the timeline was mad. I said we can't move the election. I think that book helped keep the party together in some dark days. Thank you to every single person who endured reading it. Some people probably think that books are a symbol of colonisation anyway. For our supporters, very welcome. And what sets ACT apart is that we're a party of ideas. Some people, meanwhile, believe that a political party is an enormous enterprise with unlimited resources required to govern a country. If you were taking hope or reassurance that we really are heavily resourced and have all this to draw on to govern a country, I'm sorry to disappoint you. We're mainly reliant on wings and prayers than massive resources. One person who found this out the hard way was Malcolm Pollock. Now, Chris Fletcher, Auckland's mother, introduced me to him, and he thought he might get a minor role making tea on the sidelines of this vast edifice. I still don't know how he felt walking out of Fraser's Cafe as the bewildered new chairperson of the party's only functioning electorate committee. Ruan Premathulika, who couldn't be here this morning, became the party president in very similar circumstances. And there's so many Malcolms, Margarets, Ruans and others up and down this country who have volunteered to make our party possible. We have 10 times more members today than we did when Malcolm joined, and perhaps that makes the hardest role being the party president. You're legally responsible for the organisation, but to survive, it needs to change strategy at a moment's notice. It must be the governance equivalent of riding a mechanical bull, 10 tequilas down. I've been lucky to have very patient presidents who've held the ship together, none less than the current President John Windsor, who's perhaps New Zealand's greatest political activist. John's never met a problem he can't quickly, quietly fix. Signs, mails, volunteers, no problem. They say that amateurs talk strategy and professionals talk logistics. Well, in that sense, John is a true professional and a great act president. But there's some roles that are so difficult, we actually need to pay people to do them. That would be our parliamentary staff. And if I've done anything right in politics, it's been attracting and retaining great people. Yesterday, my electorate office staff came with me to Government House for the swearing-in ceremony, and I wanted them to be there because I think they're the best electorate team in the country. I hadn't realised when I wrote that Brooke would be here, but they're one of the best. At least I hadn't thought of it. There's 3 positions in our office, and we've had 1 change in 10 years. So if turnover rates mean anything, then we have a very solid team. And the same goes for our team down in Wellington. We've been ranked as one of the best working environments in the parliamentary precincts year in, year out, and we keep attracting great talent. One example stood out more than any. When Brooke came to work in Wellington, the end-of-life choice bill was still possible, but far from inevitable. In fact, I'd say it probably looked less likely than likely. It got stuck in select committee for 16 months. And the antis refused to be constructive. They just stonewalled it. We couldn't make the changes we needed to get political buy-in. We couldn't do good lawmaking either. We'd have to make these changes in the committee of the whole House stage, where each MP can individually vote on every word of the legislation. One wrong vote, and there were hundreds of them, could have completely screwed up the whole bill and made it a nonsense in a heartbeat. And that's when we came up with the idea of the sponsors report. If 8 MPs on a select committee, supported by the might of the Ministry of Health, couldn't come up with a coherent set of reforms to a bill, then one 26-year-old woman with a sharp mind would. And that sponsors report remains one of the most effective policy documents ever produced in New Zealand. It was written by Brooke, but like Helen Clark, I just signed it. In the end, we got MPs to vote for every change we needed and oppose every change that would have stuffed it up. Besides Brooke, of course she's now our deputy leader, there have been 13 other new ACT MPs in the last decade. And they've been extraordinary. Nicole, Chris, Simon, James, Karen, Mark, Tony, Damien, Todd, Andrew, Paramjit, Laura and Cameron have been exceptional as a team of players. However, they've also formed a great playing team. And we know that a playing team always beats a team of players. Today, our MPs in government are delivering that real change that you asked for and we campaigned on. Our parliamentarians are taking on the scourge of deepfake porn. I bet you Roger Douglas never thought that would become a cause when he founded the party. We're standing up for academic freedom. We're keeping a watchful eye on the bureaucracy for farmers and tradies alike. In government, our ministers are reforming. Brooke's taking on our calcified health and safety laws and the hoary old Holidays Act. Nicole is finally delivering a rational approach to firearms law, even as she changes the courts to speed up the clogging. Karen is turning the department that failed her so deeply and personally into an effective protector of those who come after her, while Andrew stands up for the property. Thank you. Andrew, meanwhile, is standing up for the property rights of farmers when he defends New Zealand's biosecurity. And Simon Court may be the unsung hero of this government. because delivering resource management law based on property rights will do more for the people who live in this country than any other reform under this government this term. But of course the party's also bringing back charter schools, opening up overseas investment, saving the taxpayer billions, bringing Pharmac into the 21st century, slashing red tape and legislating the Regulatory Standards Bill, so for the first time our property rights will be in law. We've been busy, that's true, but other people have helped act in much more creative and unexpected ways. Take yourself back to March 2018, when the female pro dancers first got together for the 2018 season of Dancing with the Stars. They all agreed on one thing: nobody wanted to be paired with that guy. It was a guaranteed ticket home on the first elimination. Even my own family came to opening night. They thought it would be their only chance and I might need consolation after the show. And if I'd had any other partner except Amelia McGregor, they would have been right. But we ended up campaigning on, as much as dancing, politics. We took on the bullies and fought for the downtrodden, the overlooked and the physically uncoordinated, all up and down New Zealand. The kindest thing the judge has ever said is that I proved absolutely anyone could dance. I think that's what our tireless minority has proven over the years. With the quiet determination, we can change our future and the future course of this country. Anyone can dance. And that's why we stand for the farmers, the landlords, the licensed firearm owners, the free speech advocates, the small business owners, and the ethnic and religious minorities of this country. Because everyone has the right to live free in the country because anyone can dance. And why New Zealand needs more of a movement like ours? Well, let's get into the future, because this must have all sounded a bit nostalgic. If our opponents have read this far, which is unlikely because you had me at read, they're probably hoping the speech is building up to a grand retirement. I've talked about how we got to today only because it's worth pausing and looking back from time to time. It's essential to acknowledge and thank the many people who got us this far. We should, as our stalwart member Vince Ashworth says, foster a culture of appreciation. That said, I'm not going anywhere but ahead. So sorry, Labour. ACT remains your worst nightmare and New Zealand's best hope. You know, nearly every single press release from Labour, every fundraising email, every talking point is about how dangerous David Seymour is. I get so much free accommodation living in Willie Jackson's head. I might, I'll have to check with our whip, Todd Stevenson. I think I'm going to have to declare it in the Parliamentary Register of Interest. So, to Labour, yes, I am dangerous, but only to you and your batty outriders. What's more, your strategy of directing attention to ACT will backfire. Because to paraphrase Brer Rabbit, we're born and bred under political pressure. And when you put the spotlight on ACT, you show the people of this country a party with the attitude the country needs. We can be down and out through the wicked old days and rise again. We've been able to do it because we have something you can never take from us, our philosophy. Our core beliefs are the beliefs that founded this country. Wave after wave of migrants have taken huge risks to give their children a better life on these remote islands. We are a nation of pioneers, united in the belief that things can get better no matter how hard they seem. There is always hope. We don't discriminate against each other based on things we can't change about ourselves. We only discriminate based on the choices people do make. Human freedom and personal responsibility under the law. We know that the world is unpredictable, and the only path to success is letting 1,000 flowers bloom, looking for success that we can push up instead of pulling down. Our opponents are a Labour Party, best described as lost, a Green Party that barely talks about the environment. Once upon a time, they wanted to sacrifice the economy for the environment. These days, the Green Party wants to sacrifice the economy for no reason at all. And then there's the extraordinary spectre of a race-based political party that increasingly threatens violence to its opponents, tolerated by the media. What unites them is a poverty of spirit. Their idea that other people's success is not an example of what's possible, but somehow the source of their supporters' problems. And they traffic in the idolisation of envy. And even if they manage to sell it, it still won't work. ACT, on the other hand, and our celebration today shows that anyone can dance. Yes, our country faces problems, but we know in ACT how to overcome them. Starting with the simple belief, when it seemed easiest to give up, you may find that actually you were just turning the corner. Today, there are too many Kiwis leaving and not enough be leaving. I believe our country remains a good bet. We have no excuse for not creating a great country on these islands, but it's the culture that matters. And the real culture war today is not about which bathroom you go to. It's about whether we're here to push people up or pull them down. Can we move past the dark underbelly of tall poppy and celebrate the achievements of Shepherd, Rutherford, Ngata and Hillary, and those many more to come? We have to believe that life is a positive-sum game, that win-wins are possible, that if we treat each other with mutual respect and dignity, we might surprise each other. We can become an Athens of the modern world, a place where creative people are welcome to move and invest, where they find themselves joining people already here who fundamentally believe the point of our country is to make success possible. Every policy we make in government should be measured against the simple test: will this policy create an environment for New Zealanders to solve problems and make tomorrow better than today? It's actually what used to be called progressive. It used to be an idea owned by the left, but they're too busy tearing people down and putting them in boxes, virtue signalling, categorising and otherwise discriminating. If there's any party that can offer the values and the grit to take this country out of the doldrums and the constant meh that befalls New Zealand today, it's the party that's had to overcome the great Kiwi knocking machine from palliative care to the centre of government. And that effort would not have been possible without the people in this room and beyond who believed in us when no one else would, because they believe in the party's ideas. Thank you for getting us to this milestone, and buckle yourselves in, because in Hillary terms, this today is only base camp. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you.